it's all about positioning. If those scrapes are where they move in daylight, I've killed a lot of big bucks on scrapes. But there's a lot of scrapes you find that are the size of a car hood I wouldn't hunt because of where they're located.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you're getting pictures off, you're going to find that you get the young, immature bucks or lots of deer off of these scrapes. But there's certain scrapes in their proximity to bedding or where daylight movement would be that you'll get the mature bucks. They work scrapes just like the other deer.
We are live, still at Dan Infalt's house, and we've been recording a bonus episode during this whole summer content trip, and we've been trying to bank some information about Scrape Week, scrapes in general, and you were on the list of people we want to talk to about scrapes. It's a interesting topic. I think there's a lot of misconceptions. I think there's still a lot of unknown tactics that people don't know or maybe aren't capitalizing on, and there's also a lot of things people are wasting their time on. So the goal of Scrape Week is for people to capitalize on their season, cut out time-wasting sits, and I guess I'll ask you, what are your thoughts on scrapes and how do you go about hunting them?
Well, you look at the way people hunt. If you hunt over active scrapes and rubs, you're hunting the way 99% of the people hunt. So you're going to get the results that 99% of the people get. However, it's all about positioning. If those scrapes are where they move in daylight, I've killed a lot of big bucks on scrapes. But there's a lot of scrapes you find that are the size of a car hood I wouldn't hunt because of where they're located.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you're getting pictures off, you're going to find that you get the young, immature bucks or lots of deer off of these scrapes. But there's certain scrapes in their proximity to bedding or where daylight movement would be that you'll get the mature bucks. They work scrapes just like the other deer. And one interesting point is my two biggest whitetails that I've ever shot with a bow, both came off of scrapes, both in early September when the season just opened. And what I found is that when you get two big buck bedding areas next to each other, they'll put a scrape at the mutual staging area. And if you can find one of those scrapes, those bucks come right out to that scrape before they move on. And I've killed some giants on those scrapes. I killed a giant 11-pointer that was just shy of Boone and Crockett on a scrape like that on opening day.
Wow.
And I shot him at about, I think it was 1 in the afternoon. It was raining in the morning.
What?
And as soon as the rain stopped, I knew he'd go work that scrape. And I went out there, and he got right up out of his bed and came in, and I shot him. I was only out there like 15 minutes.
Wow, so you raced him out after as I'm guessing you were there right when the rain stopped, or right when the rain stopped you run out there?
I went out there. It was drizzling to like a sprinkle, and got out there, and right after it stopped, he came right in. It was an amazing hunt, an amazing season. It was, I'm such a hardcore hunter. I only hunted 15 minutes that season.
Yeah, by design. By design. What about the other one?
The other one, I was watching a giant from a parking lot come out to a scrape and work it, and there was actually two bucks. One came out of each bedding area, and they were working a scrape, and I could see them from the parking lot. And it's a parking lot. There's always 5-10 cars in, always.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a car back then, a station wagon, that I'd use as like a covert car, and I had I brake for coons sticker on it. I've told that story before, and people always joke about that. But I would park there and make believe I'm like reading a newspaper or something, and I'd watch that buck. And when I finally went in for the kill, the first one in was at 140,
Mm-hmm.
and in those days that was a pretty tempting buck. But I knew that other buck was always in right after him, and I waited. And about the time he was almost out of sight, the bigger one came in, and I shot him. And that one is the one that got dubbed the 400-pound slob because when we put it on a scale, field dressed, it bottomed out at 300-pound scale. So we don't even know what it weighed.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing was a giant, had a chest on it like this. But on public land.
Yep, in September
Yeah.
on a scrape. Yeah, that's where, I mean, when we thought of Scrape Week and when we looked at the calendar, we looked at, the end of October roughly, which I think everyone thinks that time. Obviously, one of the biggest misconceptions that we talk about quite a bit as well, too, is they're using those scrapes in September, but they become super noticeable during this time of year. So
Well, in October they put down a lot more.
that
They
too.
start just throwing them random spots,
Mhm.
but those key spots are the ones that they use all year.
Mhm.
And sometimes you can't even see it's a scrape. They'll come there and they'll just work the licking branch or just
Mhm.
barely scrape
Paw.
the ground. You know, it's not like a huge car hood scrape like in the fall.
Mhm.
But I have killed good bucks in late October over scrapes too.
Mhm.
But generally it's the same situation where it's right next to bedding.
Mhm. So I guess the big key takeaway is if you are hunting scrapes, try to get as close to bedding or possibly where there's two mature bucks.
We'll just think about why it's there. Why is this scrape here instead
Yeah.
of just saying giant
That's
scrape,
right.
giant buck, tree stand.
Right.
You got to have a reason
Yep.
for why you hunt a place. You know, there's terrain based or bedding based or whatever, but to just find sign and hunt over it is just the same thing everybody else does, and you can have the same results as everybody else.
Yeah, that makes sense. So let's talk about just quickly some places you would not hunt over the scrapes, just real quick.
The middle of an oak ridge,
Mhm.
field edge, just a random spot in the woods. I want to see that it's near thick cover. I want to believe that there's bedding in the vicinity. I don't believe mature bucks, even when you're approaching rut, very often go wandering for miles. They go a short distance in daylight, and you got to be within that distance. So sign is key,
Mhm.
but the sign needs to be where those deer will move in daylight, which is a very short window of movement.
Understood. What are your thoughts on putting cameras over scrapes for inventory, or do you do that at all?
Oh yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Because it doesn't matter if the scrape's in the middle of the oak flat.
Yeah.
That's a good place for a camera.
Yep.
Because any buck that comes in that oak flat to feed is going to go over and smell who's been on the scrape or whatever, and you're going to get a picture of him. Might be at midnight, but now go back to, he's in the area.
Mhm.
He's here. Now you hunt him, where you believe he is. You let your scouting dictate where to hunt. But you don't set a stand up over that scrape, unless, of course, you get surprised and the picture's at noon.
Yeah. That doesn't happen.
Doesn't happen often, but it happens.
Yeah, absolutely. So, is there anything? I don't know. Scrapes are. This is what happens. And I fall into this. I know a lot of other people too. They put that camera up on a scrape. Maybe it isn't out in the middle of nowhere, but then they have a lot of bucks going in there. The problem is then they go and check the camera, and it's the same as getting that sit where you should have. There's going to be bucks there more than likely if you're already running that camera there prior. Maybe you check that camera on the fly, and then hunt it right then and there if they're coming in.
Generally, if I'm putting a camera over a scrape, unless it's your cell cam, I'm putting a camera over that scrape where I'm not going to hunt anyway. So if I spook them out of the area, I just want one picture.
Got it.
See, I'm not out there to fill a photo album.
Yeah.
I'm out there to find a target animal.
Mhm.
Once I know he's on the property, I could care less about getting more pictures of him.
Mhm.
Now it's kill mode.
Makes sense. Anything else that comes to mind with scrapes? We when this goes live, we'll have a ton of different content coming out, so it doesn't necessarily have to be long-winded. But I think the key early September, get out your notebook and keep that in mind and look for that. Let me ask you this actually: when you killed those two particular deer in September over scrapes, when did you know about those scrapes? Was it the year prior? Did you find it the next spring or in the summer?
In both of those cases, I found them just prior and started glassing them.
Mhm.
The big one I shot on opening day, I found a scrape when I saw the deer. I saw the deer.
I see.
I was running a ridge. I want to say it was in August,
Mhm.
and this buck got up out of a bedding area and was wandering around, and I was watching him with binoculars on a hillside, and I watched him go in and work that scrape, and I had a really good advantage with a pretty steep drop in front of me. I knew the deer wasn't using, and I went out there a couple times and glassed him in the woods to where he was, and got a pattern going, and then felt I could go in there and kill him, and I actually even went in there and videotaped him from up there in velvet. And then I went back and killed him out of that the tree where he kept working the scrape on opening day.
Got it. Anything else about scrapes that you feel passionate about that we didn't discuss? I think just the big takeaways are the September, finding them close to bedding or where there's reason for them to be there in the daylight. That's really what it boils down to. And then run those cameras for inventory outside where you don't plan on hunting but they're going to be, the bucks in the area are going to go in there and hit that. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Well, hopefully this helps someone either save them a couple sits, or maybe they put some pieces of the puzzle that they didn't before, and maybe they'll kill a deer over scrape. So can't thank you enough, Dan. We always appreciate it. Good luck the rest of the season.
You too.
Thanks.